I'm Bethany.
And I'm Lauren.
Welcome to the Healing Collective podcast, where we explore the paradox of healing at the individual and the collective level.
Join us as we invite guests to share their personal paths to freedom. Yeah, I'm ready to start, but I notice I want to share something. So, and I'm like, she's not going to remember this, but you gave me feedback during coaches about my piercing in my nose. Mm-hmm. Do you remember that at all? And I wasn't like about it. I was like, oh, she just isn't into it. I was just like, it's fine. But recently I've been going through a process. I don't want to overshare too much about it, but it would just take too long. But really realizing that it represented like a level of oppression, almost like a contract that I needed to complete. And when the contract was completing, I was like, I have to get this out. Like, I have to get this out. It's time to get it out. So it made, I've had a couple experiences with your feedback like that, where later I make up that you were tuning into something, 5 levels down. I just really wanted you to know that.
I've had that experience too.
Yeah, thank you. I do think I often don't know why I know what I know. It's like, right. I don't have an aversion to a nose ring, but I do to that one. Like, right. I don't know what it is, but like whatever that is, it's wanting to be let go of soon, and so and I don't know if I'm right. And I hear that I really loved actually when you said, well, I don't want to let go of it right now. Like, I really appreciate you like letting it be organic. And and then I hear you decided it wasn't what wanted to happen anymore.
Yeah. I'm curious how you, like, is that tuning in or that awareness something that you can track back over the course of your life?
Since I was really little.
Wow. What did it look like at the earliest memory?
I can remember being 3 and 4 years old and being around the adults around me and knowing, like, I see where something's not like true about you, or I see where you're scared, or I see where there's a lockdown, or I just feel contraction. I guess that's what I would just say. I'm just aware of when I notice this in somebody, and I can feel it. It's more of just a felt sense. And then I can start to, when I feel it and I get curious, I can start to point a little bit, like, it's not a lot of detail, but I can kind of go like, it's somewhere right in here. I used to write notes when I was a kid to the adults in my life and say like, hey, is everybody noticing that Uncle Jack, that there's this big issue and you're all in denial around it. And when I'd ask my cousins, like, you guys want to sign the letter with me and, and give this, and they were like, no, we don't. And I would give it to them anyway and get in big trouble. Like, you are not supposed to call this stuff out, but I just couldn't help myself because I could feel the contraction in my body. I just didn't want to be around it.
So when you would get feedback and, like, no, you can't be doing that, you shouldn't be doing that, did it pause you? Did you close it down at all when that happened?
Yeah, I started to close it down more, and I started to be careful about where I shared it and where I didn't. Mm-hmm. But sometimes I'd start to feel crazy because I would sometimes point things out and the adults in my life would say, actually, that's not true. And it turned out it was true. Mm-hmm. And so then I would be really like, wow, what's wrong with me? Because this seems really true. And yet these people I trust the most are telling me it's not. So that took me, I literally was scared I was going crazy sometimes. And that's actually one of the first things when I was doing my deeper work is I actually played around with the idea of going crazy. I made up a character that was crazy so I could be that. So I could help loosen the grip of my fear around that. And then a lot of my work came with, would you be willing to stay with your own knowing, even if nobody agreed? And that was where my career started to blossom, was being willing to be okay and maybe even if everybody thought I was crazy, like, would I be willing to say I'm not crazy? And I'm grateful actually that I went on that journey and that I had all those people tell me it wasn't true when it was, because it helps me really now be so good at pointing out what I see and having the courage to stay with it. Because it's pretty common. People go, oh no, that's not true, because they don't see it yet in themselves. And so, so it was great training for me.
So many things come up around this for me.
Me too. I mean, I have that experience so much, and I'm having a transition, like, of really this question, like, what if I just stood in my knowing and released the other? The other piece that comes up though is I make up that it's supportive to have a tight community of people who regularly believe you. Like, there's got to be a place. And I feel like that's something that I'm working to build right now. Like, I have a few key people, but not like a community of people where I feel like I can trust them to believe my experience.
Yeah, I think it's very nurturing to do that. And I've actually been using that very particularly lately, as I've been feeling more courageous to speak out about what I see. And part of how I find my courage is go, remember, you've got 2 or 3 people here.
Like, if everybody else is gone. Yeah.
Yeah. And my bigger work is, recently I was doing some work where I asked myself, would you be willing to be completely alone and to stand for it? And for a long time, the answer's been no. And recently I found a yes, that I would even be willing to be completely alone to stand for my knowing. And so I feel myself getting hot just saying that, like, it's so enlivening to trust myself that much, and to trust being alone that much. It's like, I could be okay being alone, and I prefer not to.
Right.
Yeah.
I totally get that. What came up for you, Bethany?
A couple of threads. I mean, I'm having the memory. Well, you've given me that type of feedback a couple times that I knocked myself over with a little bit, and it, maybe like a year and a half later, I was like, oh yeah, that was really true. I'm like a long time table with some of these, and so it's been pretty reliable. Like you and Deb and Jim, like there's been people who have said something, even if they're like, I have no idea why I said that, and I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, and then 12 months later, I'm like, oh, and it all makes so much sense somehow, like speaking things actually into being almost. And I guess when you had all these adults being like, no, I feel like we kind of do that to kids all the time, and we do it to ourselves. Like a lot of the stuff I've been learning in SD that's been some of the most impactful is how much we train ourselves out of, like so much body stuff. Like I think I almost saw you try to yawn, but we were like, oh, I shouldn't yawn. Maybe kind of swallowed a yawn.
Yes.
And I'm like, that's just one of the things. That's just information coming up, and we've socialized ourselves out of so many pieces of information from the body. We're constantly just like, And so I've been really interested in what does it look like for me to undo some of those rules that got created. And with my kids, I feel like it shows up a lot in parenting, because there's sort of these, I love your conscious parenting worksheet that you made, like that PDF. I really love it. And I really love the idea that maybe, we're not here to teach them anything, and maybe they're just here to teach us. And all these kind of parenting norms of like controlling your children or telling them that what they think is happening is not happening, like kind of that same gaslighting of a child. Like I've just really been playing with not doing that and what happens for me when I don't do it, and what happens for me when I don't do it in front of other people who aren't most likely going to agree, is my story, with whatever it is I'm up to, and like standing in all of that discomfort. And from where I am from a couple of years ago with my kids and where we are now, as far as just connection and trust with each other, it's a really, really big delta, I want to say. So, yeah. And so I'm wondering about, and like, if it's this thing that I'm really into that you do, I'm like, wow, Diana does this special thing and she's been doing this whole thing. And I'm asking myself the question, do you think everybody has that? Do you think everyone can access that same instinctual knowing? We've had like Lauren, she's got her wizardry, and we've had a couple of channels, and we've had people who kind of maybe noticed it earlier and played different games around kind of refining some kind of, tapped in knowing system. Is it your belief that everybody has that if they tap into it?
I don't know. I believe everybody has their own ways they know what they know. And my guess is we all have different ways we access that knowing. And I do think that that everybody does have instinctual knowing, some levels of instinctual knowing, and that we haven't lived in a culture that said, well, what's your gut say? There hasn't been as much attention on that. So I think everybody can access more and more of that over time as they practice.
I've had a similar experience with Taylin. Like, it's interesting that you say that, but he'll be complaining about me and as my son. And I'm like, you're right. And like, just watching his body, like, respond to that. And I've just really noticed, like, almost every time I'm trying to really feel into, like, you're right about that, and our connection has like deeply changed and shifted. And the other day, he's taking a nap over here by me because I'm in a hotel, so it's a little weird to talk about him. But his friends were in the car, and his two friends were like, what the worst thing that adults do is, it's like they say they're going to do stuff and then they don't do it. And then Taylor goes, that's not my experience. It was like the greatest parent compliment, like, and that the awareness, all of it, like, that's not my experience. When my mom says she is going to do something, she does it. And I just lit up. And I just, that whole idea, I mean, really the conscious parenting idea, like, I apply it to conscious teaching of children. I apply it to really everywhere, like that. There's power dynamics when you shift into that space. The opportunity for relationships seems so much greater.
Yeah, you're talking about when people get co-committed and have those clear agreements with each other, that there's a whole nother kind of collaboration and connection that can happen.
Yes, and I'm saying that, like, back to the socialization, there's so many, like, just as a parenting, how we come into a lot of those roles because we've just been socialized, or we watch someone else do it. And very often, specifically in parenting, but I think it applies in work and other places, there's a clear power dynamic. I know more than you. I'm responsible for your safety. There's these beliefs that drive, all these kind of fear-based responses. And so when we can, like, shift out of that and see them, I want to say as equals, but it's almost like just balanced energetically between us, that something different is created.
Yeah, I love what you're pointing to. I love it when I say to my kids, like, I want feedback. And they're like, what? And I remember when we first got introduced to the Cartman's drama triangle around how people are victims, or in a state of victimhood, I should say. And we put them down on the floor when my kids were 4 and 6. And we introduced this idea that there's this state of victimhood, and we can all be in these different flavors of victimhood. And right away, they got it, and they started using it and saying, Mom, you're being a hero. Dad, you're being a victim. And we would say, thank you. Thank you. Yes, we can see how we're in victimhood. And we would get on the triangle and work it out. And I saw how much my kids relaxed, one, in that they were able to give us feedback. There was an equality. And that, two, their feedback was spot on and really helpful and helped us learn and grow, which gave them more empowerment. And then gave them more of a willingness to take in our feedback along the way as well. So I love what you're pointing to. I think I heard you first say, like, he said something and you said, oh, thank you for saying that.
Mm-hmm. How have you seen that transition as they got older? How does it show up? And do you see things that you're like, I wonder if that is because of all the opportunity they had to give and receive feedback from us when they were young. Is there any way you see that translating?
Well, so my kids are 28 and 26 now, and I see them both as really having very authentic relationships with us. So, and us with them, I mean, there's really not much we don't tell each other. And I certainly, if we asked each other pointed questions, most of the time we'd say the truth. And and if they didn't want to, they'll say, I don't feel like telling you the answer to that question instead of telling me a lie. Right. So there's a ton of transparency and trust there. And there's a lot of deep respect and connection. And I do think we see each other as equals, in that I call them a lot to ask for advice on things and what do you see? And I use their superpowers to guide me and vice versa. So there's a lot of mutual respect and still now to this day, a lot of learning from one another.
I'm noticing I really want to highlight for people listening this principle of asking, how is it true? Because I don't know if we've explicitly talked about that on here, but I would say even in the work that I'm doing at Lead for Liberation, it's the number one most transformative thing that I see, is just like setting that as a norm in a group and their willingness to start doing that and how it changes the way that they show up. And so for people listening, it just means that every time you get feedback, whether it's from someone you like or you love or you have an aversion to, and you ask yourself, how could that feedback be true?
Yeah, not is it true?
That is true.
No, I don't think that's true. Just starting with the premise that it is and looking for evidence of how it is.
The most challenging time I've had with that, because I've been practicing that for a long time. Anytime I get any feedback, how is it true? Even like I'm driving behind somebody in my car and there's a woman and she's doing this and her rearview mirror at me, instead of me going, what a bitch, I say, oh, how is it true that, I interpreted this as get off my ass. How is it true that I'm on her ass? And I realized, oh, I am driving closer probably than what would really be safe for both of us at this high speed. So I backed off, and rather than making it wrong for her delivery of the feedback, I just got more interested in how is the feedback true. And a couple of years ago, my son came to me, and like a lot of kids in their 20s, they want to clear up some stuff from the past. And my son had a laundry list of things that he didn't think I did well as a parent along the way. And that was really challenging. That was one of the most challenging times I've had in the last couple of decades of how is it true? And so he went one after another. And I would look at, how is that true? And it hit hard because I really wanted to pride myself on being the great parent. And I wanted to believe that I did it also, thoughtfully. And then to get all this feedback that not all of it felt so thoughtful and not all of it felt so serving was a bit of a hit to the ego for me. And so I sat with him and said, okay, I can see how that's true. Is there more? And then he'd give me something else and I would breathe, sit with that. Okay, I can see how that's true. And so I think he gave me about 15 items of places where he thought I did not do a good job in my parenting with him over, the course of 22 years he lived under my roof. And I was shaken by taking that feedback in and looking at how it was true. And I was also profoundly transformed with facing that I'm not perfect. I have my own shadows. There is still stuff for me to work on. And so it's challenging because I usually, in those cases, if I'm not present, we'll just immediately go, well, wait, this is why I didn't vaccinate you. I'm not irresponsible that I didn't vaccinate you. Here's, and I want to defend. And I don't get to learn about myself when I'm wanting to defend, and not deeply. So that's such a practice that I still find my edge around listening to how is it true?
Well, I think that's important to stamp for people because even people who are well practiced and in devotion to self-awareness, literally living it and breathing it for 30 plus years, you're going to go below the line and get gut punched by some feedback from people, and you're going to get all tangled about it. like there's not this place where suddenly you're done.
I don't think right now, I don't know if I could, if somebody goes, hey, I've got some feedback for you, and I'm imagining they're meaning that's going to be some, feedback that might, I think every single time my stomach flip-flops a little bit, my throat gets a little tight and I feel scared. I can't think of a time when that hasn't happened. It's just like, yeah, I'm going to get a little threatened here. Is this, especially, I want you to like me, and I want you to, I want you to think I'm doing a good job. And so and I want to learn, and I'm scared. And it takes a lot of presence to be in that fear and stay open.
Where did that practice originate for you? The how is it true?
Well, I learned it from Gay and Katie Hendricks at the Hendricks Institute. They were the ones who said, if you're really genuinely curious, then that means you've got to look to see how both sides of any story are at least as true, which means if anybody gives you feedback, it's usually easy to argue for why the feedback isn't true. That's more of our habitual response. And so the practice is pause, take a breath, and go look to the other side and see how it's also true. And see what can you learn, and can you view it as a gift that somebody's taking the time to share with you their perception of you, and learn from it, rather than dismissing it as they don't get it. And I just tried that on, and really almost immediately started to see new things about myself, and saw the value of it so quickly that decided I was going to take that on as a real practice.
I have had a question that's been coming up to ask you since, probably weeks that I've known this podcast was going to occur. It just keeps arriving. And it's what do you know to be true about, I don't even want to fully finish the sentence, but in my being, it's kind of like about the universe or life, like just how do you operate? What knowings do you operate around?
I think one of the things I most think is true is that nothing is true. And I was just working with a leader today who runs an organization that's trying to shift political and financial structures in the world. And I was challenging him. He was saying, I want, or the world should be, more equitable and whatever. He had a whole list of things. Joyful was one of them. And I just said, I don't know if that's true. Like, I like the idea of it, and I might stand and having a shared value with there, but I don't know if our values are the right ones. And he was really shocked at first. But as I just kept pushing, I gave an argument for why the world shouldn't be more joyful, and why the world shouldn't be more equitable. And he saw something he hadn't seen before. And I can argue why it should be more joyful and equitable is equally true. But my point is that I don't know. What I do know is I have my preferences, and I want to move in the direction of my preferences. And I want to keep owning that it's my truth, not the truth. So I think that's one of the things that's been with me since I was very young and I really like standing in, I don't know. I don't know how the world is supposed to be. And I find it humbling to keep facing that.
Yeah, I really resonate. Actually, I sent Bethany a meme. I think it was our last podcast. It was like, the more you know, the higher you grow, the less you know. And I'm going through a period right now where I'm just like, I don't think I know anything for sure, or I don't know that anything feels true. And it's resonating that, and there's these things that I really want to create around, or these ideals or something that's coming through about a possibility, right? But I'm noticing in my body right now, like in the past, that felt really destabilizing. But I'm noticing in my body right now, it's like I feel like really kind of like floaty, like I'm just afloat on a raft and just like moving over it. Yeah. And
It is destabilizing. I think the more I get into that place, the more I feel like somebody's pulled the rug out from underneath me. And I remember, like, put the rug back under. I want some truths to stand on, because it secures something. And I'm learning that the security, I don't need to come from standing on something, that I can be the security, without needing to be right about things. And but it takes a lot of courage to hang out in that space.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that this week I'm in some kind of rupture around what's true. And I'm just kind of like losing it for a few minutes every other day because like some stuff that's breaking down, some egoic stuff that's breaking down and uprooting itself from my system. And then I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. And I've, it feels terrifying.
Yeah. And like, sometimes I'm like, wow, where do you find home in all of that then? And
when you said you playing with feeling crazy, I've felt crazy a couple of times this week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This morning I woke up at like 5 a.m. with like a full fear wave. And I felt
I remember getting some one-on-one time with Byron Katie and telling her about my experience. And I said, sometimes I'm really disoriented. And she said, great, that's great. And she said, what you can start with is just woman sitting in chair. That's what you get to know, is woman sitting in chair right now. And I was like, oh, okay, that's all I have to know. And I use that over and over again. Sometimes when I do feel that, I don't know. Okay, woman sitting in chair. That's all I need to know. And that brings me back over and over again to some ease, and some sense of okayness that I'm wanting to have.
I notice some, it's probably 80 lust stuff, because when those moments have been happening, I'm like, I got to stay with this. I got to learn everything there is to what's happening. And rather than like take, calming myself down or something, just simply simplifying whatever thing is happening for myself in the moment. I've noticed that like I immediately, the automatic part of me is just like, holy shit, what's true? And then I'm like, I think of 75 people in my life. How am I going to relate to them now that I don't know about this? How am I going to, like, I complicate it in this, like, and probably prolongs that moment quite a bit longer than it needs to last. But yeah.
The 4 version is like feeling like there's a minefield going off in your entire system and just feeling like you're in the middle. Like I have these experiences of like everything's just exploding or imploding. And then I go like deep into the depths of it. And then I come back out and I'm like, oh, okay, that was worth it. But when I'm in the depths of it, it just, and there's an exhaustion that I think I've created over the course of my life because that's what I'm thinking about is like, how could this be more easeful, this process? Because I've exhausted myself being like, I want to be free. I want to do the next thing. I push to the next thing and then I get destroyed and annihilated and I go to the next thing. And I'm like, wow, what would it be like to be easeful? What would it be like to be fully supported in the process of my own deconstruction? What would it be like to feel fully at home in my body in a way and in my core in a way that like I'm not rocked by things in the same way? And I think I am going through some kind of transition right now where like I'm like, oh, I have a core now that's solid and like life is like this. And I'm like I'm staying here. And I really think this is the first time in my life that I could say that I'm like, I feel at home here. And I'm recognizing how long I've been looking for home and looking for some of those needs. And part of the way I got there was grieving, like accepting I had needs and grieving the way that those needs had not been met or available to me. And then now being like, oh, that it's okay to have needs, and it's okay to want those needs to be met. And it's okay to be like, life doesn't have to be so hard in that way.
Yeah, I think we're all learning what it's like that life doesn't have to be so hard. Mm-hmm. And that all of us are on some version of that journey. And there's something really wonderful about making life hard, and tying ourselves in knots and then learning how to untie it and going, and like just letting that be a game. And because that's how I see it when I look around, it just looks like everybody tied themselves up in knots and everybody's trying to find their own way how to untie themselves. And sometimes they try to untie themselves by becoming successful in a certain way, or they untie themselves by learning to be really kind to people, or they everybody has their own ways they do it. But then there's something else that's even deeper that's around, I think, deep self-acceptance of just letting it be okay the way we are tied up. And that self-acceptance is really one of the key pieces to no problem. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But that's what it looks like over here. It just looks like everybody tied themselves up. And it's funny, from that vantage point. It just looks like everybody, and maybe we tied ourselves up because we came into a family system where everybody was tied up. And so and we joined the system, it wasn't so personal. But that's what I'm interested in, is how do we untie ourselves for those who want to, not that it's better to untie yourself, but if you want to suffer a little less and have some ease in your being, what is it? How do we create that? That's the question that most interests me.
That's what when I talk about liberation, in my body, it feels like being completely energetically untangled. It's just like this light.
Yeah, it's like
spaciousness.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you're tying yourself up with right now, Diana?
Yeah, a couple things. Well, one is I got an invitation the other day to be on Tim Ferriss' podcast, and I could feel immediately I tied myself up in a knot right away. I was like, I got scared. My belly started flip-flopping right away. I started to feel anxious. And I was like, wow, check you out. You're getting really anxious. What's going on? And I could feel this part like, well, what if we don't sound very smart? And, what if we get all tangled up in the conversation and, we don't know what to say and we look stupid, or, what if we don't have anything interesting to say? And so I could feel that even in starting this podcast, like, what am I going to say that's so interesting that anybody wants to hear? And so I just recognize, you're just scared. You're just worried people are going to not like you, or that you're not going to be valuable in some way. Okay. And I talk myself through it by letting it be okay to be reactive. But that's someplace, and I'm going back and forth. I can feel myself, bring myself, okay. And then another version of fear might kick in, of the next kind of iteration of, well, what about this? And, well, that'll be okay. Well, what about this? Oh, okay. Another one was just today, I have a client who I think is in need, and I think needs to have some family come support them. And they're in another country right now. And this family's like, really, I need to go to another country to go support my family member. And there's that deep knowing, like, I think so. But then there's that fear of, well, what if it's not true? What if they didn't have to go and they're spending their money and their time to go there? And there's that moment of, like, I don't know for sure. And so all I can go on is my my senses, yes, and so just coming back to, can I trust myself, and can it be okay that I'm wrong? And it can be okay that they are upset with me because they didn't believe it was a valuable thing to do. And can it be okay that they're, that flip-flop was happening a little bit this morning around that. And then I just came back to, well, we're just going to learn. That's all we can do. We're just going to learn. And that's usually the shift I come back to over and over again, is that, like, what if we don't have to be right? What if we can just learn? Mm-hmm. And so that's my reliable way I untie myself. So I'd say I'm still with the Tim Ferriss, I'm still in a little bit of, yeah, but, a lot of people could judge me. And so, that's my current tying myself up right now.
You're one of the people in my life that most consistently talks about aliveness and the concept of full aliveness. And I remember I don't know which coaches year, maybe my first year I did coaches, we had an appreciation circle or something like that, or everyone was saying something they most appreciate about themselves. And you said, I appreciate that I'm willing to, I don't know if it was sacrifice everything.
Risk everything
for my full aliveness. And I've gotten to know my type 8 patterns enough to know that whenever I go, I don't know what you're talking about, that there's some, I was like, that there's some not facing, which I just make up, I'm just not ready yet to. So you with this full aliveness, I'm like, I don't know what you mean by that. And I don't know if I have it or not. And it's been kind of just floating around in my brain for a couple of years. I've been playing with it and doing all different stuff and getting data points and noticing what my stories are and what do I think full aliveness means. But I guess I'm interested in what your journey is with all of that and why it's your highest value. Yeah. And when you became aware that it's one of your highest values and what it feels like, just can you tell me about it?
Yeah. I'm just in awe that I get to have this experience that I'm having. I don't know how this happened, that I exist, but I'm so grateful. And I think the thing I can do that can most express my gratitude is to be in my full aliveness so that I take total advantage of how amazing this is. Mm-hmm. So me being in my full aliveness is for me, it feels like a spiritual devotion. That's my expression of gratitude to the oneness, God, presence, love, whatever you want to call it, the force. And so I want to just see, like, how deeply can I fully be here, fully open, fully alive, fully available for all of this as much as it's here. So it's like, that's just the most exquisite game I can imagine playing.
Thank you.
It's actually feeling like I can taste your awe.
I mean, it's all, to me, it's so beautiful. The dark and the light, the whole thing. It's the ache, the deep ache. Like, I'm grateful to ache. And it feels like a gift to ache. And then also the gift of laughter and joy. And like, it's just the whole of it. And I think it's being with the whole of it all and being available to ache and laugh and ache and laugh and feeling like they're just two sides of a coin of love.
I'm hearing that's the journey home.
Yeah, that's the journey home for me.
Mm-hmm. I have a sense of it. I am getting like slivers. I feel more available than ever to it. Even in this, there's kind of like a lot of things brewing over here in my world, but it's like I'm having these just moments of just pure awareness of the grace that's occurring within all of the other things. And then I also can see this other part of me that's like, don't look at the grace, look at the, look at the hardship, look at the, I don't know, there's an energetic experience of it to me. So I'm appreciating like feeling it and like holding it in my body a little bit just by you expressing it and like, oh, this is the taste of that. That's what she's pointing to.
Yeah. I love it. I'm steaming my glasses up. Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's the grace. It is. It feels to me like grace. And I like the voice that says, don't look always at the grace, look at other things too. And that's true too. And how are the other things part of the grace? And how is grace part of the other things? And it's just such a complex system. Yeah. And so to be with it all and to feel I can feel it as I talk about it. The aliveness it feels so good to be in a body and to feel turned on and, feel my cells as I'm talking about this, tingling and the electricity and the sensations. And I'm very excited about celebrating embodiment and, and what a gift it is. Yeah.
I'm noticing wanting to, because this is very new for me, but I wouldn't say new like year, 2 year, but I want to point to a couple things that are leading me to the place you're pointing around embodiment and around those graceful moments. And the first one is nature. Mm-hmm. I got a chance to be on a ranch in Colorado for like a good amount of COVID, and there's like 10 people in the whole county, and it's just really untouched, natural. And I realized how deeply disconnected I am from the aliveness of the beings that are the earth and the trees, and when I started attuning to that, I can't unattune to it. Mm-hmm. And then when I went back to Chicago or different places, the concrete, I literally could feel the lack of that. So I was really grateful to wake up to that. And now I have a practice of like putting my feet in the sand every morning and putting my hands in the water and doing these things to remind myself. I like put little offerings to the trees to just really place my attention on how alive they are. And then the second piece is the practice that I learned from you all in CLG around, it really started, I could pinpoint it with identifying and tagging a body sensation to an emotion. That was like the starting opening for me of the embodiment that I'm dramatically experiencing now. And I think medicine work also super helped with that. But I just can't get over when I track back to that, like that just starting to go, oh, my back is tight. I think I'm angry. And now what I'm experiencing is just like, I can't even explain it, like a spaceship of sensations.
Right.
And I'm like, I can track that back to that little practice that opened the door, So I think that it seems like some practices are coming through, and I wanted to point to those as practices that are guiding me to some of that embodiment and that aliveness.
Yeah, as you can tell in my background, I really love living in nature. It is part of how I stay deeply connected to, and I'm in awe of nature. I think nature is it's amazing. And so nature does remind me of, wow. Yeah. Wow.
My experience around sensations and starting to tune into them and pay attention to them and eventually allow them is, yeah, like Diana, your program and all the conscious leadership work. I was like, oh, okay, I can do this. And I started kind of registering stuff. But even when I started, I would just pick one and not even look anymore. Because I was scared of feeling all of the stuff. And I remember I was in like a big drama, like a heartbreak drama. And I was on the phone with Lauren, who's like, my story is at that point like a lot more practiced of just the internal drama of the body and stuff. And she was like, okay, what comes next? All right, be with that. Okay, now what? And I was like, I was just doing all this stuff I had never done and just like letting my body move me. And I was like, I thought I was in that, it was a new level anyways of the practice that, and I wasn't so scared suddenly of it anymore. I wasn't like so scared of like letting a sensation or a story of what a feeling might be based on the sensations. Like I was just like, oh, okay. And then I think that was like within a week or so of starting getting somatic experience therapy. And it's like this whole thing of like, I felt like if I really let my feelings come all the way, I would like die. That they would take me out because it would be so big and intense. So I was just avoiding them for the most part. And so when I started to do it, I was super scared, and it was a rough month. I was doing it weekly and I was exhausted and I was grumpy, like was so, what do we call it? Like, yeah, like just kind of edgy. And it's like all this stuff that was frozen was starting to unfreeze and getting into this like, kind of place before it settled. And as I've been doing that, I think when you were talking about aliveness, I think my draw to the SE work for me has been, I've been able to allow my own experience so much more, and I'm not scared by it. And it took really intentional practicing to get there. Yeah, and the more I do it, the more when something comes up, it seems to be more about the thing rather than the thing under the thing, or the thing under the thing, or the 1,200 things that happen that were just like the thing. So it does feel more easeful as as you would say, maybe the pipes get cleared out over time.
Oh, I thought for sure, if I let myself feel all the sexual energy I actually have, I think I will physically blow up. Like I just couldn't imagine that my body could stay together. I remember feeling like that was true, or if I was going to feel them all, I wouldn't be able to walk and talk. Like I wouldn't be able to do I couldn't feel them and move around. So it was a journey to go, well, let's start taking little steps here. And over time got to liberate all of that without blowing up. And I do think maybe it's important to be mindful about taking baby steps, because maybe some folks who might have a little go offline, I think maybe it's because they are letting things come through so quick and so fast. And so it gets kind to take your time.
That's what I really like about the SE is trusting the body to titrate. Mm-hmm. Rather than like, oh, this is here, let me, It's like a letting it guide you. To me, it's a different type of listening that is friendlier. Because in the SE world, going right into the thing really hard when it comes up, basically going hard into the trigger is more likely to have a re-traumatization than getting near it, just getting on the edge of it. And just kind of slowly slicing out little pieces of it, and it just kind of comes down a little more. You get further faster by going slower.
Yeah. That's great, because how I do it inside of my own self is I imagine I'm a little kid and I'm scared to go into the ocean. And so I have my adult self go, well, you know what? We're just going to go put our toes in. That's all. And let's put our toes in, and then we can run back out as soon as we want. And then, okay, let's go and so I think I'm just naturally doing that inside of myself.
That is quite literally what that pendulation is like. It's a wave. It's a and then it comes back naturally. It's like the tide. Like it makes progress over time.
Yeah, that's great. I like, and I love that feeling of, you don't have to go put your knees in. Let's just try a toe.
Yeah.
And you can stay in there as long as you want, or you can run out. It's, like there is no rules about it. So I really, I can see how there's been something organic and how I created a game inside of myself that was an SE game.
Yeah. Yeah, you did. And I make up that's because you're in touch with your body. And like the way that we have so heavily socialized ourselves out of listening to the body, even like a big part of SE is, okay, I don't want to feel this anymore, or I feel myself fuzzing out or freezing because it's maybe a little bit of overwhelms here. Great, stay in the freeze. Accept that. It's our same practice. It's just notice, accept, notice, accept. But even when accepting, okay, I don't want to anymore, or actually it's too much, or I need a break, like that's what's perfect. Okay, so it feels friendly, just feels really friendly, but still in devotion to being with your experience. It's just like a little bit different words and different, whatever. So one of the things I want to say is we get into like a lot of woo and like wacky stuff and interesting stuff. And one of my favorite days with you, Diana, was like 2 weeks before COVID. I was at your house for a couple of days and we did a bunch of stuff and I got a lot of feedback on my facilitation. And I how I think of it, like the image that comes to mind is one night we were just talking and I was like, how did you get here? Like, what's all the stuff you did? Like, where did you find all this stuff? Because you've been collecting for your entire life, just like every weird seminar, every spiritual teacher, every crazy retreat, like every book, every new model, like you just were taking it all in for however long. And then you're like, okay, here's all the best stuff. Here's all the things. And I think it's all, we can simply encompass all this really cool stuff with like this. And that's the conscious leadership model. So I was like, what were all those things? And in my mind, it's like we opened a filing cabinet drawer and we just started going through like all these crazy stories. And I was just like, I was taking notes. I'm like, this book, that book, look up this guy. What is this lady? Like, I was in awe of all the stuff, all the experiences that you've had, like how many yeses you had to just going and exploring stuff. And I was wondering how available you feel to kind of share like maybe what some of the more edgy stuff was, or some of the stuff that was really for you in that moment, like, ooh, like this is really, something's really happening for me around this, or a big shift is happening, or this was my perfect medicine at this moment. Like what are some of the standout moments in your eclectic?
Okay. Well, so I'll tell you, I was always, when I was a kid, I remember I would look up at the stars. I have this very particular memory. I'm 5 years old. It's dark at night. I'm leaning against a tree and I look up at the stars and I realize I know I'm not from here. I'm from all of it and whatever this is. And there was this real sense of, let's figure out, where am I? What am I made of? Or where am I really from? And so I started looking at all of that just in my own self. And I'd read books and do some things, but I was a Midwest girl, drinking my beer in my sorority house and then, marrying my high school boyfriend. And I, growing up in a Republican household where, we all didn't have much of a window outside of our pretty little, Indiana town. And my girlfriend moved to Chicago and my girlfriend said, you have to go meet this intuitive. Her name is Sonia Choquette. And she's going to do a reading and it's going to rock your world. And so I said, all right, I'll go do it. And so I went and met with Sonia and she spent about 90 minutes with me. And I remember I literally was shaking. My whole body was shaking as I left her house. And she gave me a list. I want you to read this book and this book and this book. And I want you to go see this person and this person and this person. And so I did every single thing she said. And I remember one of the first people she wanted me to meet was this woman who was a intuitive healer who lived on the north side of Chicago. And I went and laid on her table and she shook rattles over me and she was making all these sounds. And it was funny because she actually worked on my husband first and I could hear this like, oh, and all these weird sounds. And I was like, what is going on? And what have we done? And where are we? And, and I just tried it all on. So I got involved in a lot of intuitive work with Sonia. We did all kinds of really cool exercises where you'd have to, guess where you were and go find people in the town and figure out, like it was really fun to try on all these different ideas. I got into all kinds of Reiki training. I got my master's in Reiki. I did all kinds of healing body work for a while. I got into flower essences and dowsing. And I mean, like every kind of alternative thing you can think of. I got interested in Waldorf education. And I went to every talk that happened in Chicago for those years that I lived there. Anybody who was coming around in the circuit, this is before internet, anybody who'd written a book on spirituality or psychology or human consciousness, I was there. I took course after course. I studied I studied with people channelers. Like all things alternative. I mean, you name it, I bet I did it. And what do you call it? Like walking over fire and hanging out in those hot domes. I can't remember what you call them. Like I remember being blindfolded. One of my favorite experiences was being blindfolded. It was already dark, but it was blindfolded, and somebody was across a big piece of land, maybe, I don't know, it was like a half a mile away, banging a drum, and you could hear the drum, and you were blindfolded and you had to find your way to the drum. And there were trees and all kinds of things. And I got to this place where I literally could see what was in front of me energetically. Like I could feel the tree before I would hit the tree. And I started to be able to, wasn't full out running, but I was like trotting down through this, wherever I was going, being able to move around rocks and trees because I could just see them in my mind's eye. That was one of the coolest things I ever did, that it's like clicked on after having all of my other senses turned off. So yeah, I did all kinds of wild stuff and spent years in the world of Enneagram, which isn't so alternative. And then got involved with Gay and Katie's work and did all kinds of rebirthing stuff in water. And, I remember I went to an event where you had to write down all of the things you had done. They were only going to take 20 people for the event and you had to apply. And I made my list, and my husband, Matt, said, babe, I don't know if you should put all that down because they're going to think maybe you're crazy for like how much you've done. So I wanted to just taste it all, and I wanted to see what fit. And I found there was a little gem in everything I tried. And everything gave me a new awareness to something else. And then, I eventually really landed on things that felt like had the most significant transformation for me. And those are the things that we ended up writing about in the book.
Yeah. And how do you answer that question now? Where am I from? Like, how do you answer it to yourself?
Where am I from? I'm from everywhere and nowhere. Mm. I'm from all that is. I am part of all that is. I am all that is. I'm is. Just is. Yeah.
I'm thinking about The Alchemist. How have you read the book? Yeah. Have you read the book, Bethany? It's an allegory. And basically this like shepherd boy goes on this long journey to find treasure. And he goes all the way to Egypt and the pyramids and visits an alchemist and ends up back where he began and finds the treasure under the tree that he sat on when he got the dream to go to the pyramids. And that's what I was thinking about your 5-year-old self. Like, I'm not from here. And it's to take you all over to see everything that's possible just to bring you back to I am here. Yeah.
I'm just is. Yeah, exactly. That is how I feel. And it was a fun adventure. And I realized the whole time I'm seeking something and I'm trying to get somewhere. And then it is a big joke. And you start to realize you've always were there. It's just a matter of just coming back home and remembering. And it's easier than you think, but there's just something fun about the journey, and I've just learned to respect that in myself and others. There's something about wanting to take off on some journey to go find something that in and of itself is a really fun game, to go seek out something that you think is, somewhere. And then it is a big joke, and a wonderful thing to recognize, oh, after all that seeking and searching and exploring, it was actually easier than I thought. But, sometimes what's the fun of that? So I respect and honor the ride.
What I love about it, I guess what I'm playing with is the way that the ride expands our awareness to what we can track and experience with others. And so then it kind of adds these dimensions to not just your reality and your experience of reality, but then how you experience and see reality with others.
Yeah. And I recognize, like, all paths have a gift. I started an interfaith center when I lived in Ann Arbor, Michigan, with a group of people. And that was what we were interested in, is how is it that all paths are pointing ultimately to the same thing? There are just different ways to get there. And so I liked being able to travel on many different paths and see how there is something they all share. And so, and I'm glad I did it, because now I can respect all the different paths that I see people are on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Including,
I think that, empathy too. There's like empathy, I don't know, or acceptance maybe is a better word for. And if I think about kind of your idea of just being in Indiana in that small area and not seeing outside of that, then in those types of realities, other realities are really threatening. They're really challenging, because if I accept or start looking at your reality, it's going to challenge the current reality that I'm experiencing. And I don't know internally, can I hold both at the same time?
Yeah. And, if we're going to talk about edgy work, the edgiest work I've ever done is working with psychedelic substances. And I'm just profoundly grateful for that work. But if we're going to talk about, what was the most vulnerable, took me to my knees multiple times, showed me, so many truths. That medicine has been probably some of my greatest teachers. Well, I wouldn't say it has been my greatest teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Can you tell us about maybe one, or like a memory or some specific, a bite-sized experience that you had?
Well, bite-sized experience.
Or give us the whole thing, whatever.
Well, I remember, here's one that I really liked. I remember starting to see all kinds of things that were way outside of what I've ever seen before. And I remember going, oh, that must mean that. And it was like I was going down a path, and the medicine was like, no, you can't go down the path any farther unless you let go of making that mean something. Mm. And I was like, but it means something, but I think that means my mind kept wanting to connect dots and make meaning of it. And every step it would be like, nope, you can't go any farther until you drop the meaning. Nope. And it was just like, I remember like an hour's worth of exploration around wanting to identify why or what or how, and then over and over again, just asking me to come back to the unknown and not know anything. And that was one of those really powerful snippets within one of the journeys that was a game changer for me and helps validate, like, you're just the subjective interpreter and it's not true. And you don't get to keep going forward until you can recognize that's just your opinion. And what would it be like to live without believing your stories?
So and it seems like there's something on the path that's like, as soon as you, I guess I'm thinking about the Tao that can be Tao is no longer Tao, but as soon as you get to that thing and you're like, this is the thing, it gets, and then there's I was even talking the other day about, how I was like very Christian growing up. And then I transitioned to like a different kind, a new thought tradition. And then I transitioned into like 12-step. And when I did therapy, that was the thing. Even when I was at CLG, that was the thing. And it's just, and then I get to this edge where it like blows up and I can find the gaps or something. And then I'm like, and now I'm just trying to like approach it from the beginning. Like, this is not going to be the thing, like this is just another tool, or this is another pointer. How can I incorporate it without holding it so tightly?
I had another experience in which I believed I died in a medicine journey, and it was different than any other time where I felt like I was in death or something. This one was actually like I floated above my body. I saw myself and I saw people working on me, which I didn't have an experience of physically, but it was true that was happening. And then I went into what I thought was death. And in that, they showed me I'm like, oh, this is what it is. This is what. And they go, we've been trying to show you this your whole life. And I'm like, really? And then all of a sudden there was a movie that got played where it showed me all the songs, all the music I'd been listening to since I was a kid, there was like visuals and all these things. And it was like showing me the whole world's been trying to remind you this whole time. It was always there. And with all these little snippets, that was such a cool thing. And that's when I realized, like, oh my God, the world is such a friendly place. Like it's always been singing me back home in all of these unique and different ways. I just couldn't fully see it until that moment. It all became so clear. And now I can see that so easily now, how everything's just reminding me of home, of love, of the truth of who I am.
When you got to death and you're like, oh, this is what it is, how would you describe what this is?
I can't find words. I've been trying that was like 19 years ago. I've been trying for 19 years to find words. I can't find any words to describe it except to say that it was, it was incredible, mind-blowing. It's not something I can put words on it, and beyond that, yeah. Those words don't even come close to describing it, but it was wild and phenomenal and beyond any imagination I'd ever had, not even close. It was just awesome.
That's what I think. When I think about the universe, sometimes I'm like, there's certain moments like, you're so smart. Like it's so beyond any, like the creativity is so insane. And then I sometimes look at us as humans as, how like toddlers, like let's say your dad is mowing the grass and then you have like a play school mower and you're like, look, Dad, I'm mowing the grass. That like so many things we create in this reality as our human selves are just us being that kid. Like, look, I made one, and like the universe is like, and like, I'm so far. I think about the internet like that. I think about, just so many things, and we just think we're just the greatest, and it's just a little taste.
That's what I do know is this is a tiny little part of the whole, and it's unfathomable how creative it is. Yeah.
Did you go through an astrology period?
Oh God, yeah. I did all kinds of astrology. I studied the tarot for a long time. I used to do card readings. My husband was in the pharmaceutical industry, and during the holiday party, one of the hits was Diana would do card readings for our team, and like in the corner of the living room, and all kinds of stuff. And yeah, I like to keep things simple now. I'm pretty simple about most things. I just like to stay with my experience and stay with whatever is coming to me in my knowing, however that comes. And I like all those things, but I don't find them necessarily helpful in really helping me. This is just for me, I'm not suggesting this for anybody else, but I just find that if I'm really wanting to unwind and come to my full aliveness, I just find less is more and simple is profound.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, there's two questions that we ask all of our guests. So I would just to compare consistency, all that, I'd love to hear your answer. So what do you believe about healing?
What do I believe about healing?
Yeah.
What do I believe about healing? Well, it's kind of a paradox to me, because on one level, there's nothing to heal. And then on another level, there's something to heal. And it's about walking that line. To the extent that there's someone that believes there's something to heal, then there is. And to honor that. And to keep asking, okay, what do you need to heal? What do you believe you need to heal? And finding that. And also finding the experience that there was nothing to be healed. It's a wild, I call it like walking the line.
That's the tagline of our podcast, the paradox of healing.
Is it?
Yeah, that nothing has to be healed, and
and something has
lots
to
of
be
healing.
healed. Yeah.
It seems like I'm getting a lot out of playing the game of like, what's the next thing that wants to heal up? Like, where's the contraction? What's my attention go to? And using it as a pointer for like, what's the next thing that might want to heal up? And all the data points I'm getting around that whole game I've been playing are good,
Yeah.
And holding
Yeah.
that you're perfect all along, and
Yeah. And for me, I think acceptance keeps coming back more and more and more. I'm just finding the power of acceptance for healing. Accepting the world being as it is, accepting my parents for having parented how they did, accepting myself for being how I am, accepting humanity for doing what it's doing. There's something about accepting for me that is one of the greatest ways I'm healing, to the extent that I have forgotten I'm already whole. Yeah.
That'll be the promo clip. That's the next.
Yeah, we always do that. And the other question is, what do you believe about collective healing?
Maybe what?
Or healing the collective, since we are the Healing Collective podcast.
Or just like, what edge do you sense kind of the collective is on?
What edge is the collective on?
Around healing, maybe, yeah. Like either one.
Oh, okay. As I continue to go on my journey, what I am discovering is there is nothing out there that is not me. And that takes so much courage to face. And my work is to go look at, where do I have an aversion, name the aversion, and see how that aversion that I see out there, see how it lives in here, and see it fully and accept it. That's what I believe is key now to our collective healing, is to be able to see that aversion in one another. And then the other thing that I think is, I believe this world that we live in is a dualistic world that has polarities. And both sides of all polarities are equal. And humanity wants to say, and identities want to say, no, this is better than this. And I'm wanting to learn how is it true both sides have value, have equal value? And could we argue that and learn to listen to, okay, if you're on the other side, where's the value there that's equal to the side I'm standing on? And really be in devotion to seeing equality and duality. That I think is key to our collective healing. And those are the edges I think at least I know I'm on, and I think I see other people being on as I support other people, is waking up to everything I see out there lives in here, and both sides of polarities have equal value. And how is all of that true?
In the program I'm teaching, that 2 of the agreements, and I really feel like I asked for these to arrive. One of them is we see ourselves in everyone else, and the other one is we can hold multiple truths. And that's really like, it's this,
Totally.
like we can hold multiple truths. Yeah. I think I even like, I can really like nerd out on this and make up all kinds of stories about it. But one is that I think the transition, I think our brain is evolving in a way that like our frontal lobe is the part of us that can hold like more complexity, and our survival brain is very dualistic. And so as we that's actually the experience I've probably had the most impacted by applying the commitments to my life, is being able to, move out of just seeing everything in duality and being like, oh, there's so many complexities at one time. There's so much to hold. And I make up that I'm using more brain capacity, that it's supporting the evolution of my body, and all of that to practice holding all of those things at one time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so fun for me to go, oh, I can see how that's true. Oh, I can see how that's true. Oh, I can see how that's true. Wow. Okay. And then the question is, well, then where do you go? Because people can feel like they're going to get paralyzed if they can see it all, but it's still like, hey, you're still going to have a preference, like, hey, here's vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry. Which one do you want? It's like, can you see them all valuably equal in their value? And you're still going to have a preference probably. So pick one. And so, and if you don't have to make what you pick mean so much, it's just, can you hold it with a playful spirit, a gameful spirit? Somebody was just teaching me that, gameful spirit. I like that. Can I have a gameful spirit about what I'm picking?
So like in a real life, to like apply this to like one of the hot button things, like when we ask people to make lists of the stuff that's like not okay, like I'm right that this is not okay, it's always the same stuff, right? It's like, kids getting sexually abused, racism, whatever, like rape, it's always
environment.
Yeah, climate change,
politics.
Yeah, it's always like a pretty similar list. What do you make of the like unified pressures around these things? Like so many people in the same contraction at the same time with the same intensity. What do you make is being called forward? Is it just that? Is it to challenge us to be able to hold this? Like, do you have a story about the poignancy of like what seems to be happening in the collective consciousness right now around like those edges? Because it's not like pick up your socks, right? It's like these bigger topics. What do you make of it all? How do you choose to be with it, and what do you make of it? I hear your practices,
How do I choose to be with?
How do you choose to be with, like, I guess in your practice of not making any meaning, like around millions of people in the same inquiry at the same moment? Like, it feels like it's getting focused on some stuff. Like even a couple of years ago, when we would teach curiosity and we're learning about when we teach the commitment, it was more like the issues people were bringing every day were like, my husband doesn't listen to me. That was the issue that they're thinking about all day. And that's not happening anymore. Like a lot more people are bringing these really big things. And that's what they're thinking about all day. What's your stories around that? Like, what do you make of it?
Yeah, I do think, to your point, like things are heating up.
Things are heating up.
Things are heating up.
Yeah.
More things are rising to the top.
Yeah.
For that people are pointing to that they didn't used to point to, I think is what you're suggesting. And I can see how that's true. And doing this work for the last 30 years of when you're asking people like, what are the issues? You're right. They're bringing up more collective issues than they ever have before.
Yes.
There's much more of a we issue than there used to be, much more of a me issue.
Yes.
And I mean, what I make of that is there's more attention on we than there ever has been before. And I think there's a collective shift happening there around what's it like I don't think it's just moving from me to we. I think it's me and we. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the tension we're in. And that's why I think we're really on an edge, because we're trying to find out, how do you do both? Yeah. And like, no one knows yet what that's really like. Like, it's an evolutionary journey. And I remember hearing somebody talk about, there were thousands of years in which we were very tribal. It was very much a we, and there wasn't much individuation at all. And then we shifted to this world of deep individuation and that particularly came in when we were able to melt metals, and we added writing in, and that created a whole stratification of power. And there was all this now individuation that occurred. And so there were these two different polarities of me and we, and now we're like, okay, what would it be like to have both of them be fully here? And like, I think all of us are like, we don't know. We don't know what that's like to really do that. And we're just, taking our first baby steps into that. And it's messy. And I think all this tension that we're having is healthy tension that's occurring for evolution to pop to a new place. And I don't have any answers about that. I'm still like deep in the dark about how this is all going to find its way. And I'm very excited about how it's going to find its way. And I can feel it, though. I can feel the yes and that's wanting to happen here, that I'm very, very excited about, because I like the idea of them both being here equally.
Yeah. I mean, I think about it as the microcosm and the macrocosm are just the same. So the same experience that I just described of my internal, can I hold it all in myself, is just happening like at this level, like multiplied by all these people, and it's can energetically happen. So then we're seeing it, like all our dualities are coming to the head, and even me and we is a duality, right? It's just another duality that says there is both versus there is all.
Yeah. And I am coming to the conclusion that I can't really support that we until I do my inner work to see that the us and them is all inside here, and handle that first here, and let everybody be here at the table inside of myself before I'm really available to support everybody being at the table out there. And
I get, I'm interrupting, I'm getting excited, but that's the theory of change for the conscious racist, is that, we can only create or support the liberation of others to the extent that we are liberated ourselves. And on the other side, because what I've seen how with our best intentions, in the world of some of the things that I've dealt with, like we just keep perpetuating the same patterns, just the way we do as an individual. Yeah. Right? When we're in fear, we just we get lots more money to do it, and we make it really pretty, and we brand it, and we say it's going to be this great thing. And then it's just another, it just easily can get into that because fear grabs onto that. And if more attention was focused on our ability to hold trust as individuals, our ability to hold multiple things at one time, I think we create differently from that place.
Well, I keep hearing, this is what I keep hearing is, we don't have time. We don't have time to work on the me part yet. We got to work on that over there. And I think that it's that scarcity of we don't have time that keeps getting in the way of just like, could we, and maybe, I could see how it's true. We don't have enough time. And maybe there is an urgency, likely is some urgency here, but how do we also create enough space for yes and, so that there is more opening for, well, yes, and let's see how quickly we could do our work here then. But there, can we open up to there is enough time? I'm getting more and more curious about how much that story of scarcity around time in particular is in the way of our collective shifting.
Well, I'm thinking about you as, you know, kind of coming back to this story that you've told of who you are. And I see it as these mycelial networks, and like as you as a core of a mycelial network. And so as you became more liberated and more aware, you know, you supported the liberation of your kids, you supported the you know, you start to create all these things that then become a mycelial network for liberation. But we totally take mycelial networks for granted. We can't even see them. We don't even know, you know, we're like, oh, what's that ugly mushroom that's, you know, by that tree, not knowing everything that's happening below it. And that I get really inspired by the possibility of every individual that I support their liberation, the mycelial network that they're connected to that changes as a result of the freedom that they experience and their ability to hold more trust and more love. And that's really the only place I feel agency, because when I look out there and I do all that other stuff, I mean, I've cried as a principal. I had so many days where I just cried in my office. There's this one time we went to visit like a really prestigious private school, and that NASA was visiting. The kids had just gotten lattes from their like internal Starbucks at the school. And then then they introduced us to one of the students who had designed and built a guitar, and they had like basically given him 4 people to help him design and build a guitar and do his own concert. And I went to my car and I was because I really thought I was killing it as a principal in the west side of Chicago. And I'm like, if this is the bar, like if this is the bar, well, I'm never going to get there. I just give up right now. And so I really had to find like, where do I feel agency in this conversation? Because it's too overwhelming.
I love the question of what's in my control and what's not in my control, which is what I hear you saying. And I'm starting to just come back to, I only have what's in my control. And that's helping eliminate a lot of my suffering, like you're describing, of staying in what's my agency. And I'm shocked about how much is in my control.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It's amazing how much is in my control. Mm-hmm. I have impacted, I bet I've impacted 1 million lives in all of the, like you said, in all the network of, you know, the coaches I've trained who then are going out and doing their work, and the parents I worked with at their companies who then took it to their children, and the, you know, it just goes on and on and on. And so I can do a lot, and just with my simple life here. So it's, yeah.
Well, we're coming down for a landing. How do you want to complete, Bethany? What are you feeling?
Well, throughout the whole chat, I just keep noticing how much I trust you, Diana, and how I'm happy we're like in the same boat. And yeah, there's just so many things that you model that I think I use you to resource myself quite a bit, and like learn how to be with stuff. So I'm just noticing like a lot of appreciation and love, and yeah, I'm kind of like, I can't wait to see what happens next in the movie, especially around what you're talking about, and this we me edge of you know, the collective and humanity, and this kind of up leveling that seems to want to happen next. I feel like I'm like hanging out with some people with like some real insider information. Like that's kind of how I feel like pretty turned on about, just like can't wait to see what happens next. And yeah, I like following your lead to whatever extent, you know, that I do that. So yeah, I just notice trusting you a lot.
I notice my heart is swelling, and the thought is coming in, I found you. I found you both. And I'm just so grateful that I found you, and how much I'm enjoying playing with you both, and and being part of a larger tribe of now millions of people who are finding one another again in this place of love and presence and ease and aliveness and gratitude and awe and all the things that we point to, that the 15 commitments are pointing to, that somebody pointed to us and we're just passing on to others. But in this moment, I'm just grateful I found you. Yeah, and to be here with you is like a dream come true.
I have an appreciation. There's something like with my relationship with Jim, because I did all the Chicago stuff. I feel like I see him a lot. I talk to him a lot. There's just he's in my sphere way more often. With you, there's just been these like really poignant moments. But they're all like I said, even in my email, like I feel like I could write them down and I could be like this moment and this moment and this moment and this moment. So I'm really appreciating like who you are in the world, that you create those moments for people. And I know it's not just me. And there's something else, which I'm noticing that's selfish to say that, or something. There's like a voice, but I'm like in this moment, being with you is allowing me to love me in this moment. Like I'm seeing myself. I like feel honored to see myself back in like both ways, I guess. Yeah.
This is very similar to how Jim's episode a lot of appreciation.
That's what love does. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is right here. This is just my favorite thing. And I could just bask in this, remembering and connecting. And particularly when you said that, Lauren, like just, it's just so wonderful to come back and see the truth of ourselves and feel that love and acceptance. It's just, oh God, it's just heaven. It's just everything to me. So, and I'm so grateful when I get to be in the presence of it. It's so nurturing. Yeah.
And the more awareness I get of how accessible that feeling is, how that changes my life and what I choose, because I'm not trying to hoard it or hold on to it or, I could see how much scarcity I've been in around having the taste of that. I could even track kind of like my addiction, like my work in 12-step around sex and love addiction, to the scarcity of that feeling and just that, having a sliver of it in a way that's really destructive, feeling better than nothing at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love here that you're in this more full aliveness right now, and recognizing that when you start to occupy this, that other stuff just fades away. It's not even, you have to even work on.
It's so interesting, right? Yeah, so true. Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys. I just want to say that I feel like I got myself more in talking with the two of you. I started to connect some dots about like why I am who I am and what I do, and I'm grateful for that. That's really satisfying to me.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. I love that. And thanks for introducing me to my buddy here. Thanks for putting us in the same coaching. because we're having a lot of fun.
Oh my goodness. It's like, you two remind me of Grace and I, who's my dear buddy. We met in one of these programs like this, and we've been finding the last 25 years as deep friends. It's just like, it's one of the great gifts. And so watching the two of you looks like, us 20 years ago. And so I know how fun that is. I know how fun it is to find a playmate and to want to co-create together and have such a shared foundation. That's that's really fun to appreciate this pairing here. And I'm so grateful you guys are stepping out and experimenting, because that's what we did. We just were like, okay, let's teach a class. Okay, let's make up a training. Let's travel this part. We just started trying stuff on. And I see that that's one of the two things that you guys have in common is your willingness to get out there and just let it all hang out and see, like, the experimentation. And also you're willing to take a stand for something, and the courage to do both of those things and see where it goes. And I mean, I'm so excited because I'm like, oh, I know you're just getting started, and where you're going to be in 20 years will blow your mind. Because I remember 20 years ago, I would never, ever have imagined that this is where I would have been. I mean, no one could have ever, so I'm very excited about getting to watch, being witness to your unfolding here.
That feels really good over here. I'm also just feeling into appreciation for Bethany, that I want to appreciate, like, the ways that you believe me, and the ways that you've made it be safe for me to be angry or to tell the truth in ways that allow me to hold it in other areas of my life. I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah, and since I've known you, Lauren, I feel you coming out more with your truth, which I felt it in there, but it was like is it okay? Is it okay?
Right.
And one of the things I'm noticing as you're letting it be okay to share your truth, like all of the like, it looks like everything around in your system is just settling down, and it. Like, everything looks so much easier as you have the courage to come out and be you.
Yeah, I think you hear that reflection. That feels very true.
Yeah.
I was tied in knots.
Well, I always like to say, if we're really truly this infinite part of the whole thing, and they tell us it's an infinite reality that goes on forever and doesn't have a beginning or an end, then I guess we have infinity to play. So why not tie yourself up in a knot and untie yourself? Like, what else are you going to do with infinity is one of my favorite taglines. Like, and that it just gives me some, like, of course, why wouldn't you? It's a game. And I just look at everything through the lens of it's a game.
Yeah, I love that about you.
All right. Well, thanks all.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Maureen, and mwah.
We'll talk soon.
All right. I'm cheering you on. Keep it going.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Hey, everybody. If you've got any feedback for us, we welcome it, or ideas about future guests, email us at healingcollectivepod@gmail.com. Our website is thehealingcollectivepodcast.com. We are at Healing Podcast on Twitter, and we are at Healing Collective Podcast on Instagram. Special thanks to Monda Creative, who edits all of our podcasts, and Two Tall Women Productions, who produce. Thank you.